We continue our interpretation of Jeffrey Pfeffer's 7 Rules of Power. The 5th rule is to persistently build a social network. Power is a game based on people. You need to know and leverage many people. A social network can provide you with information, help you find collaborators, and secure crucial votes. Several studies have shown that, for income, promotion, professional reputation, and job satisfaction, networking ability is one of your most important political skills. But social networking is something that honest people often dislike. Research has found that people who believe in the usefulness of social networks spend an average of 6.3 hours per week on networking, while others spend less than 2 hours. And researchers suggest that you should spend 8 to 10 hours. Not only do we not spend enough time, but we also don't network with the right people. Actually, as social animals, we enjoy interacting with others. But most of our time is spent with family and friends. Sociologists have long understood that, from the perspective of obtaining useful information and growth opportunities, you should interact more with weak ties, those people who are relatively distant from you and on the edges of your social network. The reason is simple: the people you spend every day with know what you know. You should interact more with those who know things you don't. Research has found that the biggest difference in socializing between successful individuals and ordinary people is that successful individuals spend more time with people who are distant from them than those who are close to them. They aren't just rushing home to spend time with their spouses. They're more interested in unfamiliar people. I heard that, when Lyndon Johnson was young, he once stayed in a hotel with young political elites from all over the country for an event. He brushed his teeth 5 times in one night in the public restroom because he wanted more opportunities to meet and chat with people. I also heard about an official in China who has 3 dinners with different people every day. You might say, is this right? Isn't this obviously about mutual exploitation? Aren't forced interactions awkward? Because you find it distasteful, you always treat work-related socializing as a necessary task to complete, rather than as a skill to develop, so your social network isn't effective. Traditionally, we sometimes even thought that not being good at socializing was a cool characteristic. For example, we used to think that intellectuals should be bookworms, and scientists should spend all day in the lab doing research. The reality is that scientists nowadays must often socialize, because you always have to collaborate with people. Nowadays, a typical paper is often completed by 2 or 3 groups working together, such as one group handling experiments, another group handling theory, and another group handling numerical simulations. These 3 groups often don't belong to the same research institution. You need to frequently communicate with various individuals. Especially those scientists who oversee a lot, spend most of their time in meetings and discussions. We're like wandering adventurers. You not only need to know all the important figures in your field, but also know what each person is doing, who can be your collaborator, who might join you in applying for funding, who is your competitor, and who is your enemy. Don't forget, the internet was invented by physicists at CERN to communicate with colleagues around the world. This is even more so in companies. CEOs probably spend most of their time not dealing with internal matters, but going out to manage external relations, meeting and making friends with peers or leaders from other industries, discussing big strategies. It's like a president can't just focus on his own people all the time. He must network internationally. Often, outsiders' attitudes can determine whether you can ascend to power and whether your power is secure. Do you see the significant difference between this kind of socializing and the connections in people's minds? In my opinion, the most crucial reason why honest people are reluctant to build social networks is due to a misunderstanding of social networking. Intuitively, we often think that socializing is about establishing some kind of emotional relationship and imagine social networks as relationship webs. In fact, emotional relationships are relationships that exist between acquaintances. Simply put, it's about whether we get along well enough. Rapidly establishing emotional relationships with strangers often involves some form of emotional investment, such as heavy drinking, observing, and pleasing, which can indeed be awkward. Furthermore, some people understand social networks as relationship webs or interest webs. Today, if I do you a favor, I expect you to return the favor. In the future, treating interactions as deposits and withdrawals in an emotional account. This is pure mutual exploitation, and it's something a gentleman doesn't want to do. But an insight I gained from reading Pfeffer's book is that, what we really need, in our work social networks, is neither a relationship web nor an interest web, it's a network of collaboration and information. This is a new type of relationship, in the modern work environment. We separate work communication from emotional communication and interest communication. Work is work, life is life, cooperation is cooperation, personality is personality. We all have multiple identities. We only need to invest limited emotions and engage in limited competition. Once you understand this, there's no awkwardness, and you'll actively build your network. Specifically, there are about 4 methods to build a social network. The first method, also the simplest and most fundamental method, and the prerequisite for all work relationships, is cooperation. I heard that your team recently achieved some experimental results, and I happen to have a theoretical tool. Can we collaborate? No one would refuse such an interaction, and a conference call could be arranged immediately. This is because cooperation benefits both parties. Cooperation is a win-win. You can treat cooperation as the goal, but you can also treat it as a means to establish relationships. Research shows that cooperation can create cohesion among people. When everyone works together on something, relationships naturally become closer. This is called the IKEA effect. You know, the furniture sold by IKEA isn't pre-assembled. Usually, they give you a bunch of wooden boards, and you have to assemble it yourself, like building blocks. The IKEA effect says that the process of assembling furniture increases your evaluation of the furniture, because you feel like you've created it yourself. Similarly, when you work together with several collaborators to complete a task, not only will you have a high evaluation of the task, but you'll also have a strong sense of identification with your collaborators and your team. In simple terms, working together is the best way to strengthen relationships, much better than drinking. If you can't collaborate at work temporarily, participating in an activity together or going out together can also enhance relationships, but experience has shown that such activities are best when they are novel, interesting, and leave a lasting impression. The academic world has a natural advantage in cooperation because everyone has a name and reputation. Where you come from and what papers you've published, others can easily find out online, so there is strong social trust here. But there's usually a trust issue in general work relationships. If you suddenly tell someone you want to collaborate, their first reaction is likely, "Who are you, and why should I trust you?" This leads to the second method. The second method is to find common ground and a sense of community. The most common way is to have someone you both know introduce you. For example, if you have an investment deal and want to collaborate, and your former university classmate happens to know the potential collaborator, you can ask them to connect you. A key insight here is that even relatively weak commonalities can quickly build trust. Maybe you haven't been in touch with that former university classmate for many years, but that's okay, it still works. This is because we always tend to trust people who are similar to us. Alumni, hometown connections, and other such relationships naturally create a sense of intimacy and enhance community identity. Since introducers are so important, why don't you become one? If you can regularly introduce people to each other, your position will be significant, right? Indeed. This leads to the third method, becoming a broker. Ronald Burt, a sociologist at the University of Chicago, introduced a concept called bridging structural holes, which means two groups that were originally unconnected need a mediator to connect them. Real estate agents connect buyers and sellers, investment bankers connect those who need capital with those who have capital, headhunters connect vacant positions with talents. These are all intermediaries. By becoming an intermediary, you not only contribute to both groups, but also increase your own importance. The most suitable intermediaries are those who belong to two circles simultaneously. In Japan, there is a nuclear energy company with two types of employees. One type understands technology, and the other type handles business, and they don't usually interact much. In this company, there is one person who is the only one among those who understand nuclear energy to have an MBA degree, and also the only one among those who handle business to have a degree in nuclear energy, and he speaks English very well, and he's the only one in the company who frequently communicates with foreigners. So he's essentially at the intersection of three circles, making him extremely important. The company definitely can't do without him, and if there are promotion opportunities, he will be given priority. This is the hub of a social network. In Pfeffer's previous book, Power, there was a case study that left a deep impression on me. There was a college student who hadn't graduated yet, but was interning at a company. He happened to meet an executive of the company, who expressed a desire to lecture at the college where the student was studying. Probably because it would be prestigious. This was actually quite easy to arrange, because the student happened to know a professor who wanted to invite outside executives to lecture. Half-jokingly, the student said to the executive, "If I can help you arrange an opportunity to lecture at the college, can you arrange a formal position for me to meet the CEO?" The executive immediately agreed. The student easily convinced the professor to provide the lecturing opportunity, and he got the position. What's this? This is being a broker. That student must also be aware of the fourth method of networking, which is to approach the centers of power. There's a guy, an immigrant, probably not very familiar with American culture, maybe not good at the drinking and chatting to make friends thing, and not very strong in business skills, but he has a favorable position. His responsibilities require him to frequently report the progress of his team to the company's senior management, which enables him to attend board meetings. At the same time, he also interacts with many departments in the company, passing on various messages. As a result, he was easily promoted. Approaching the centers of power has at least two advantages for you. One is that the higher-ups can see you. The other is that you can access a lot of critical information, how the company operates. So when choosing a position, try to choose one that allows you to access the core of the work. This means that you'd better go to a department that controls key resources or solves critical problems. For American companies, the finance department is usually very important and often leads to leadership positions. For example, the current CEO of Microsoft, Nadella, is Indian and joined Microsoft on a work visa. Usually, people with such backgrounds would have to struggle at the grassroots level, right? How did he become CEO at such a young age? Because he was previously in Microsoft's cloud computing department, and he turned it into the most profitable department at Microsoft. If you joined the VR glasses department at Microsoft that day, you might have caught up with this wave of layoffs. In power games, often, position is more important than ability. Do you see it? All of Pfeffer's methods for building a social network do not require you to lose your personality to forcefully build relationships with people. You don't need to engage in emotional bribery. Good relationships are the result of mutual cultivation. We can even say that good relationships are actually a byproduct, the result of everyone working together on something. What about going out for drinks every day after work? That's probably the least efficient way to socialize. What you should strive for is not how to win over someone, but how to move to a position where things are happening. The final admonition in this part is that a social network is not necessarily better the larger it is. If you can find the right person for any task, that's already good enough. Personal branding is about others knowing you, while social networking is more about you knowing others first and taking the initiative to connect. But I understand that, in the power game, whether it's personal branding or social networking, fundamentally, it's about two things: knowing and being trustworthy. If key individuals know and trust each other mutually, your social network is the best it can be. That's the content of this section. Next, we'll discuss, use power when you have it.
If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.